I'm your host, Sheldon Alexander, and things are heating up in the NBA playoffs as we have 4 great series going on with, I'm going to be honest, I think every single team thinks they have a legitimate chance to win, and they could all be right. We'll get back on track for sure after a 1-3 ATS record on the last pod with some NBA picks for every game coming up in the next series, as we're still clicking at 41, 25, and 1 overall for my NBA picks on the pod. And very interested to see how the next game 5 goes, as well as the Mavs and Suns, another series that went from 2-0 to 2-2. And I mean, if I'm talking about foul calls, I mean, Chris Paul fouled out in that game. And this is why people hate the NBA. Chris Paul had 4 first half fouls in that game. Yeah. Mind you, Monty shouldn't leave him in the game to pick up his 4th foul, especially once you start seeing some of the fouls that were being called on Chris Paul in that game. And like, for the record, right? I had nothing on the Suns. I had nothing on that game, like the Suns game 4 or the Philly game 4. I had nothing on either of those 2 games, right? So this isn't even about like, I lost money and I'm like, you know, at least 3 of those foul calls on Chris Paul, 3 of the 6 were just horrible calls, like just horrible calls. And if you have, and if you don't even give the opportunity for the Chris Paul 4th quarter to even like be a thing in a game that was kind of close. Right. Like as a referee, you have drastically altered the outcome of that game. And I don't know if you need to call fouls on Chris Paul and Luka both jumping for a rebound and Luka flopping. I don't know if you need to call a foul there. You can just not blow your whistle. 2 guys jumping for the ball and Chris Paul, the way smaller guy, fouls Luka. Like, what are we doing? You even have Luka laughing, saying, "Hey, I learned the flopping from you," right? So like, it's insane. Either way, series tied at 2. We have a series. Another thing we talked about from the Dallas series in comparison to what was going on in the Bucks and Celtics series was the 3-point shooting. And I talked about how I didn't think Dallas would be able to hit the same threes in this series that they were able to get against the Jazz. And hey, game 4, they hit 23s. Yeah. I can say I was wrong there, right? Credit where credit's due to Dallas. They banged in those threes. The other guys were hitting shots. It wasn't even all Luka in that series. And as the series now, you know, flips back to Phoenix for a game 5, it's Suns -6. That's a lot of points. That is a lot of points. But again, might say I'm stubborn. I'm on the Suns. And the reason I'm going to be on the Suns in this game is just because if Dallas came out, this is a classic NBA playoff scenario where Dallas's role players at home in front of the crowd were hyped up. They were fired up. I mean, they're standing on the bench. I don't know if you saw that whole thing about a memo sent out to the Mavs about how their bench was too like standing up and too close to the court. Like they were told to like back up. So if you watch the start of game 4, I think it was, Mark Cuban decided that he was going to join the team on the sidelines, standing up and being even more closer to the court, kind of as an FU, which is just like very classic old school Mark Cuban, but also just a sign that we're here. We're in the playoffs, right? This series has gotten real spicy. Heading back to Phoenix, as mentioned, I'm on the Suns -6, and I know that's a lot of points, but I just think Suns bounce back. The Dallas role players, again, do it on the road. Home court matters a lot.
Yeah.
And it's the same. Sorry, it's the same thing as Philly, where like you see how great those role players played at home. And now I'm going to remove that when they go on the road.
Yeah. First of all, your boy Cubes very much on a Lewis Hamilton vibe as far as like overcompensating whenever somebody sort of threatens to get, fine them or whatever. You saw Lewis Hamilton, they put not a ban, but a limit on how much jewelry one can wear And Lewis Hamilton showed up to a press conference wearing 5 watches, like 11 necklaces, and like 10 rings. That's basically Mark. That's basically Mark Cuban. I'm surprised he didn't have 5 watches on the sideline. Yeah, man. You mentioned the supporting cast, right? 8 threes from Dorian Finney-Smith. Like,
Right.
really? 8? Like, stop it. So I missed basically most of the first half of this game. I got in sort of, a little bit late from being on the course yesterday. And then I walk in, I turn the game on, and they're like, Chris Paul with his 4th foul. I'm like, what? Like, come on. Because honestly, like, yeah, the Mavs got out to a start in that game. And listen, I avoided that game, that this series in game 3, knowing that if this wasn't going to be a sweep, right? If we're doing the gentleman sweep thing, that Mavs were going to get game 3. And I gave, them a little, had a little more faith in the Mavs in game 3 than I did even the Sixers, which is why, like, the Sixers, it was like, all right, let's just put a little on the old plus 600 here to see if we can dig up a series out of this. And we have. I don't know that we've even necessarily dug up a series out of this, other than maybe the landscape. You look around and you go, okay, like Memphis, Golden State, like that looks to be a pretty quick one. I think we probably got to make this series 2-2. Like, if I was a conspiracy theorist, that's what I would think about that, especially after you tell me that those free throws were so sketchy.
You know, I'm not one. I hate the Raptors Twitter fan base that is like the refs. But like, one of the Chris Paul fouls where him and Luka jumping for a ball, Luka falls on the ground. That's one foul. Another foul was Chris Paul dribbling the ball up the floor, and Brunson's on his back, and Chris Paul slows up. A play that Chris Paul does all the time and is always a defensive foul. Yeah. But they called it an offensive foul. And it's like, you've never called that an offensive foul in Chris Paul's entire career. But you choose this game to call that an offensive foul. It's just like, come on. And if anything, it's a no call. It's not an offensive foul.
Of course. Yeah. Right? He tries it
10,000
times. It never works, or like rarely works, but it certainly never gets called on him.
And then he fouled out. The one he fouled out on, it's like, is that a foul? Sure. But you're not fouling out a Hall of Famer in the playoffs on that play where Brunson just misses a layup. Like, it's just like, what are we doing here? Right. That's when people watch the games and they're like,
something's up here. Right. Yeah. So even when they were down 10, I was still like, okay, I still think Phoenix is actually going to win this game. But the problem is like you mentioned, we don't get the second half, the fourth quarter, like Chris Paul effect in all of this. And so now we flip it back to Phoenix, and let's remember what the lines were when the games were in Phoenix. They were -6. I think there was even maybe some -6.5 in there at some point. And Phoenix won all of those games comfortably and covered relatively comfortably. Game 1 got a little sketchy at the end, even though they were up like 18 points with like 5 minutes to go. That got super tight. And there was actually a shot attempt to backdoor us there. But effectively, nothing has changed, right? It's not like there's anybody in and out of the lineup and all of that sort of thing. So yeah, I understand why the number is the same. And I understand why the number can be the same, because Dallas just won 2 games. So you're not going to come back and adjust Phoenix at home up to 7, up to 7.5 or something, the way that if there had just been a third straight game and we had, and these game 3 and 4 was just wiped from our memory, like, then you would adjust it because Phoenix won those games so comfortably. So I don't think that Dallas found anything to sort of change the sort of chemistry with regards to this series. I think they just had Dorian Finney-Smith making threes and Chris Paul fouling out. And I just don't think either of those things are going to happen once we get to a game 5. Now, is there other ways they could still have a good shooting game across the board? But like, even when Luka was putting up 40 plus points, they still weren't covering in Phoenix here. So I think you just literally Men in Black yourself to forget these 3 and 4 games of the series and just take Phoenix again. Take Phoenix again anytime they're at home. Now, I don't know honestly, it looks a lot like the last series, where it's going to be Phoenix wins game 5, then they go on the road in game 6 and they clear it up, in game 6, right? They finish it all out in game 6. And so, the question is this
some security for his family in game 6 in Dallas?
A full team. So yeah, I just think like small blip along the way here that we have seen before with regards to the Suns, in conjunction with the Warriors looking seemingly to be handling Memphis. And we're right back to the situation where Phoenix is available, better than plus 300 to win the championship. Something that, again, if it's better than plus 300 along the road through the playoffs, just go ahead and hit it. Hit it again if you want to. I am not worried about the Phoenix Suns here. I think they're going to make the finals comfortably, and I think they win the next 2 games, and I think they cover in game 5.